Hi, I'm Grant. Welcome to Second Plate, a show all about reusing ingredients and just making use of what's already in the kitchen. Tonight I wanted to make Caesar salad, and it is about 95% entirely from scratch. Particularly, we're going to be making actual Caesar salad dressing with mayo, anchovies, Worcestershire sauce, as well as our own croutons. And we're going to be tossing it all together with some romaine lettuce to make a nice simple salad that is, if anything, it lets you really know what's kind of like in it and lets you kind of decide what you like in your Caesar dressing and kind of dial it into what you personally like. So let's get cooking. So the thing I'm going to start first with is our croutons. This is something you can usually make in advance. This is just Italian bread I brought from a local grocery store. This is actually a couple days old because I had to test this recipe, and also that's kind of what you always want to make croutons out of. So I just cut them into various shapes and sizes. Usually this is about, let's say, ideal. You can go bigger, and then you have the advantage of they're going to taste a lot better because they're going to have a ton of oil, salt, pepper, and say like if you want to put on like garlic, stuff like that. That's nice, although I remember always having a debate with my boss at a previous place about demonstrating a lot of value, like having big chunks in food and actually being able to eat them, particularly in line with say like other stuff in the salad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start there. I have some olive oil here that I'm going to just kind of eyeball. Toss that in there. A little bit of garlic, which I just freshly chopped before the show. And then I'm going to grab one of my rubber spatulas. I'm going to start just kind of stirring it and tossing it. So this doesn't have to be a perfect process. Really, I'm just kind of like tossing them to get them as coated as I want. I like to go a little bit lighter with this. And I'm particularly using this large bowl because what's nice about this recipe is it's going to use pretty much only one bowl. So I like to get this started in here, and that way you get some of the olive oil and the other seasonings into the salad when we dress it later. So I like to get them just decently so because really these are going to toast no matter what. The oil will just get them like really dark. So if you want that, really get them deep. Add a little bit more olive oil if you so choose. Let's get a little more in. That. Once we think we're pretty good, I'm going to toss it with a little bit of salt and pepper, just like you would season really any other food. And although this is going to be a little bit later in the show, we're actually going to be adding some Parmesan cheese with that, but that's going to be after they come out of the oven. So I have preheated that oven, as I toss this right here, to about 350 degrees. These are incredibly easy to make because really you're just toasting them. So generally I do 350 because I do everything at 350, but you could do it higher, you can do them lower. And if you make them ahead of time, you can use them in soup, you can use them in salad, and they last like a pretty good length of time overall. So I'm going to go ahead and just spread these out. I ideally do not want them to be touching. So I just like, get them nice there. This is such a nice, quick use for just day-old bread, which is something I've really been trying to find a use for because I need to make sourdough for the show. It's something I've always kind of wanted to learn how to make. The downside of that is sourdough is like a kid where you have to feed it every day, otherwise it dies and you have to restart, which means you have to make a lot of bread. So it's just one of those things where like, hey, if I don't have to actually use it for a sandwich, if I can use it for croutons or in just thinking maybe a bread pudding recipe sometime, that would just be great. So again, just 350, I'm going to put them in there. About 20 minutes, but really I'm just going to really keep an eye on it. At home, my oven's like essentially right where I cook, so I just keep looking down. Or you can do it entirely just in advance, and it's still just such an easy process. All right, so the next thing is I actually have some romaine lettuce here. It is the go-to for Caesar salad. And it's pretty easy to chop. This is probably my favorite lettuce. I have a vendetta against iceberg lettuce in pretty much everything, so I always go for romaine. So I'm going to go ahead and stack these up as best I can. That one's tangled. Because what I'm actually going to do to start is to not chop these horizontally. I'm going to cut them straight down this little spine. It's a nice little tip, actually, that seems to make a difference. Go ahead and get down to the core, toss that. And this is just something I came across as a tip and found it was really good, but they didn't really say why. What's interesting about this spine is that it makes it very hard sometimes to pick stuff up with your fork, just because it will take either too much or too little, or it will force stuff out. So I'm going to just basically cut it straight down there in one cut, maybe cut off a little bit more of this base, so I get manageable pieces. So we're going to keep going like that. It's a big theme of the show that I try to do in just all my cooking is stuff can look good, but if it's not readily edible and easy to eat, I feel like it just ruins it. My go-to example is like how many times I assume people have had, like, say, a really great burger, but it's just absolutely impossible to manage to eat, so it ends up ruining the experience. Same thing, just being careful with my knife. And there's no strict amount of like where you cut. Generally what I'll do beforehand is I'll take the, I'd say like 2 inches off the bottom, then I would chop them up like this and then toss them in a strainer. You can also wash them with leaves, or if you end up making a lot of salad, you can get a salad spinner, which will let you wash it and then instantly get all the water out. I have no need for a salad spinner, but every time I do a recipe like this, I swear, man, it would be so nice if I had one. Okay, so I got this. This is going to sit over here because when we dress it, we're going to want to add it like a little bit at a time to actually make sure it's all evenly coated, and it actually makes a pretty big difference. So I went ahead and made about 2 romaine hearts. I'd say 1 romaine heart can be maybe about 1.5 people. I usually like it because what this recipe is really good for is I'll just have stuff around, and even though its base is a Caesar salad, all I really need to do is like, okay, I bought romaine hearts, I know I got Caesar salad dressing in my fridge because I love it, and then I'm just going to toss whatever else I want on it that I just happen to have in my fridge. Okay, just going to double check on these. They'll take a little while to get dark, and we can actually flip them if they end up, say, start burning, but they should be pretty good, just untouched as is. Don't need to turn them, don't need to adjust the racks. You can broil them, but then you have to really watch them. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about that actually kind of fueled this recipe is I wanted to make homemade Caesar salad dressing because I saw a recipe for it, and I was always kind of curious, like, a big misconception is actually, I suppose, the name of the Caesar salad dressing. I believe it's attributed to a chef that has no relation to Caesar in Rome or anything like that, but he just happened to be named Caesar, and he was stuck like one night working for a restaurant where they had very limited ingredients. So he had to make a dressing and a salad, essentially like a side dish, entirely out of just what they had on hand, and that gave birth to the Caesar salad, which actually explains some of the odd ingredients. So the actual base of this is going to be mayo. This is just, I believe, Hellsman. You can make your own mayo. That's actually something I've been trying to strive for and see. It's a little bit more involved, but it lasts a good amount of time. As well as I have about half a cup of olive oil here that we'll also be tossing in there just for some kind of creamy fattiness. Parmesan, of course, and then I think what you could call it a secret ingredient, not because it actually adds the most flavor, but it's anchovies. It's something I think a lot of people just don't know is in there. And if you didn't know, it's basically like those black specks that are kind of in Caesar dressing. I don't know if anchovies were in the original. I've heard they aren't, but it may have just been a adaptation. I had to specifically go and find these because in Nebraska, they're not just readily available. So I just want to kind of like show these out. So these are actually anchovy fillets. They are not full anchovies. They're not that smelly because they're so tiny, but we only need just about 4 of them, and you get like 16 in this package. So I just want to kind of show what those look like. I would usually, if I was in my own kitchen, just kind of drain them. I'll just put it out here. But it's essentially, it's just a fish fillet, just really tiny, and we're going to be using 4 of these to just kind of give it a little bit of flavor. I think this, if anything, is what people are going to want to actually like kind of dial in if you don't want like a fishy taste. Not that I would describe them as that. I would describe them as almost more salty. But if you don't want that, don't need to put that much in. You can just stick with the basic ingredients. Or if you really like that, go for it. This is essentially kind of where like the meaty flavor comes from. So we're going to go over here to our blender. All right. sure it's good. And I'm going to start first with the mayo, because that's our base. I think the only issue I really have of working with mayo is just trying to like measure it and just allot it and get it in and out of containers because it's mayo. It's a little bit thicker and like more like sticks to itself if you make it homemade, I believe. Let's wait for that. But I have yet to do that, so I went and just got mayo. I would say this is not Miracle Whip. Miracle Whip, a little bit different. It's not technically mayo because it has, I believe, either more or less vegetable oil in it. I forget which one it is. So we got that. Going to add some of our oil. Like so. Our Parmesan. And one obvious theme of this recipe, I'm trying to add like about 2 ounces, but really this is up to you. This is a great recipe to just kind of taste as you go. But a big theme of this recipe, if you can't tell, is it's basically the 4 same ingredients. We're just going to be putting them on the croutons, on the salad, in the dressing, and then just mixing them all together. This is Worcestershire sauce. This is also where some of the flavor comes in. I actually didn't know this was in there either. I thought it was just, I don't know, some kind of like creamy ranch style base made with like milk or something. But no, a little bit of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and blend this a little bit to get it together and taste it before I add the anchovies. Cool. Going to make sure I start mixing this around. And you can start seeing like that color coming in from the mayonnaise. If you make it homemade, it's actually a lot more yellow, which is I think most interesting. A little bit of this. More Parmesan. I didn't buy a particularly strong tasting Parmesan, but you can if you wish. It will really affect the flavor. This is a great thing if you, I think, got like a really hard white cheese. You could really taste it and just put like a lot of that in there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add our anchovies. I know the premise of the show is to reuse ingredients, but I've yet to find anything else I'm going to use the anchovies for. I've thought about making it on a pizza just because I've always heard of it as a thing, but I've never tried it. I'll be honest, I actually was really afraid when I went out and bought these that I was going to open this little can and it was going to be whole anchovies, and I'd have to like go in with like a little tiny paring knife and essentially skin the fish and get all the like the itty bitty bones out. So I was actually really relieved when that was already done for me. Okay, I want to make sure I go through here. I know just from my personal blender at home, I want to make sure I stir this because the last thing you want right now is like a whole anchovy to get in there. It wouldn't ruin it. They're completely fine to eat as is. You don't have to cook them. But it would be a little bit of a surprise. So just kind of keep stirring, stirring. And you can make as much as this as you want. Obviously, I think if you were going to make a lot of salad, it would be just prudent to make a whole bunch at once. So let me go ahead and just taste this. Okay. I want to add just some more salt if I haven't added already. It's really interesting because I almost found I had trouble finding the right taste because I knew it was going to be, I guess you could say, a little bit more pungent than what I would buy like store-bought. And also you have to make so many more decisions, like what kind of cheese exactly are you going to get and you're going to put in this? Or like how many anchovies are you going to put in there? How are you going to make homemade mayonnaise? So I knew it was going to be a little bit more interesting than I expected. But I was surprised, like once you start going at it, it really starts kind of coming out being more of what you expect. So I'm going to keep blending this. It's going to be very thick right now, but cool. And now we're going to do just a little bit of a test here for this. So right now it's going to look very thick because it's basically the mayo, and all we did was add a ton of solid stuff and fat to it. So like if I just scoop up some of this and go like that, it's very, very solid. It sticks to itself and comes out in globs. So what I'm going to actually do then from there is I'm just going to take some water and I'm going to slowly add it. Actually, since I have some of this, let me just toss some garlic in here too, because it's going to end up in the salad anyway. Garlic's an interesting ingredient. Like everyone I think agrees it smells nice, but some people like want just the right amount and like dialing in that perfect amount's a big deal, and other people are just as much as you can possibly put in it. Can we do this? I think I can actually. Yeah. Okay, so now while this is running, I'm going to attempt to just slowly add water and just keep retesting it until it's the right amount of essentially watered down as I particularly want. Because you might want it really runny, or you might want that goop depending on how much you want to actually kind of toss it. So you can already see it's starting to just blend a little bit easier. Okay, keep going at it, and this starts looking, it might be a little bit overboard. Not a big deal if it's too saucy. We can just turn it back into that by adding, say, more anchovies, more cheese, either, honestly, anything you want into it. I know that there's a strict, quote-unquote, recipe usually for this, but it's really whatever you want in your own kitchen. So I'm just going to do some more Worcestershire style stuff. Toss that. And then take my spoon, and you can see it should start to like actually kind of go a little bit looser. And that's going to hopefully be key for when we're actually kind of like tossing and dressing the salad to let us actually get it evenly on everything, because that's a big pet peeve I have with salads, is that you want to be able to like make this nice dressing, you want to make this nice salad, but if you just have a completely fully made salad with no dressing and then just plop on some like chunky dressing, it's not going to be interspersed. I think everyone who's ever had a salad has had that situation where you pick up like, say, one single bit of like romaine lettuce that's just absolutely covered in dressing, and then you get to the bottom and it's either like just all the watery runoff of the dressing or just none of it. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer some of this into a bowl. And it should run pretty smooth. So this dressing, from what I've heard, will last about a week to 2 weeks in the fridge, which makes it really good to make this recipe alongside something else you would use it for. Like particularly, I was kind of trying to make up some of the romaine extra because I'm going to use this personally for my own like lunches at work and such. So we go ahead and have this here. And now if we go ahead and look back at our croutons, they are pretty much perfect. Looking a little bit strong, so go ahead and turn that off. We're going to pull these out. They're looking a little dark because we put some of that extra oil on. Not a big deal. And this is what I kind of said. You can instantly see exactly where some of these got more oil. So like this one right here, probably pretty much untouched. It's a little bit more than, I'd say, toasted. You get right here where it's a little bit more crispy. And then the ones that get a lot of oil are just at the back. They're the ones that get a little bit too much. But that's preference. Some people like them darker. Some people like them really oily. It reminds me of, I used to work at a Hummel Park. I taught wilderness skills, and we would do the big s'more part. That was always what the kids liked. And I can tell you, every kid will tell you that they like their marshmallow completely burnt up, but I know that was never the case. They just couldn't keep it out of the fire. So we're going to go back to our original bowl, add all of these. I guess I can just dump them in. And now that they have come out, we're going to begin to kind of like let them cool while actually tossing them with the rest of our Parmesan. You can also add some stuff like garlic. I like adding garlic powder. It just seems to stick. Let's actually just add all of it because we're going to be putting our salad in with this. So just kind of smear it around. Add maybe a little bit of garlic because I like garlic. And again, anything that doesn't go into here or into the actual, say, the dressing, for like this recipe is just going to end up on the salad itself. So just going to keep stirring. If you want to be fancy, you can kind of just flip it, but not a big deal. If you get like softer croutons, I feel like it goes a little bit better for that kind of stuff. But really, I usually make these like ahead of time. I just make them because I have excess bread. It's a good excuse to make them, and I'll put them in soup. So it's just nice that they happen to go so well with this salad. So we're going to go ahead and do this here. I'm going to add my salad. Try to not fill this up. You'll notice this bowl is significantly big for how much salad. That's pretty much key. Okay, got that. Got my dressing. And one thing I meant to grab that I was not able to actually find in time, but I really recommend for recipes like this, get food prep gloves. I worked with them at that kitchen I'd worked at previously, and they make such a difference. Like, one, you can get in here if you wash your hands and you're clean, but not everyone appreciates that. But if you have food prep gloves, you can really just do so much more with them. And as like a cook, I'm just going to basically be squeezing this and picking it up. But as a cook, I think it's underappreciated times you don't have to wash your hands after touching something else that's dirty. Like you always think about like, oh yeah, I want to keep my hands clean for when I do touch something. But at that job, I had a ton of things that were just like, hey, just peel like a ton of rotisserie chicken or just anything that's oily. And being able to not have to like wash your hands for 5 minutes straight after, just being able to take it off and you're fine, it's a great feeling and you can get them pretty cheap. Like I personally found that's one of the things I really took away from that. Also found that I really love aprons because it's amazing how much functional use as a tool an apron has, just to pick stuff up, wipe stuff down, just have an extra giant pocket like a kangaroo to put stuff in. It's incredibly nice. So at this point, we actually have our Caesar salad. I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of this because salad, when you get down to it, I feel like is best made in just giant batches. So I'm just going to keep doing that, drizzling it and tossing it. Again, just adding more at a time. Normally at home, I would be just constantly like taste testing this. Like this is the time where you'd want to say, okay, hey, maybe I want to actually add a little bit more pepper in. Maybe I actually want to add something else. Like even though I don't believe it's standard for a Caesar salad, I would normally add in tomatoes. That's usually just a great go-to that I have. Okay, good. Trying to make sure not to like let the croutons get swallowed by the salad. And then we're going to go ahead and actually dish it up. So I just have a simple little bowl. I like really wide salad bowls. It just goes back to making them like really functional. And being able to spread everything out is a pretty big deal. Plus it lets you kind of like prep it as you see fit. So I'm going to just kind of like stir it. I'm going to get the croutons all the way to the right side. And I'm going to very purposely try and place every bit of it. So I'm going to do this. Get a nice little layer on the bottom. That's just essentially my base layer. You can see how like if you pick up like a nice little leaf and I just pull it like right here in the center, you want to see just Caesar all over it. That's what you're going for. I don't want giant globs. Like if I just toss this in as is and just like dumped a big glob, it would not be as good. Okay? And this is just personal preference. Like if I were to have guests over, I would try to plant a couple croutons in the center layer just because it's like a game, right? When you eat salad, like you don't want to go all for the croutons at the beginning, but you also don't want them to be gone either. So keep doing that. Spreading it around. And then normally I would like to, say, garnish this with something. There's a couple different things you can garnish it with. For this, the obvious choice is just more of what's in it. So now I'm going to take, say, my really giant croutons, put them right around there. But I've seen another really popular one being, of course, say, tomatoes, other kinds of cheeses. Particularly though, take the same kind of cheese that we used, say like Parmesan, and get them into like nice little sheets and just put it around on top. And one thing I've been, like very personally been trying, because I didn't know this was a thing, but I've just been putting like pepper. Like I always knew pepper, you can see it's in and around it, but just putting it like right on top, getting a nice little amount right there. And then I personally also like to serve it with a side of the dressing itself, just because it lets you kind of under-dress the salad just a little bit, and then you serve it with a side, and then whoever's eating it, they can kind of like make the choice that if they did run out and like you get to the bottom of the bowl and it's just the dregs of the salad, you can like pull a little bit more in. And it's just like a nice little touch, even though it ends up being overall pretty much the same salad. So here we have our homemade Caesar salad dressing. Again, our Caesar salad dressing itself will keep for about a week. We can keep our croutons for I think about 2 weeks in the refrigerator. So now what we have is, this makes a great, just very quick, even if you don't prep, say, the dressing itself, very quick meal, but it's just so much great like meal prep. Like I can just prep like 3 romaine hearts, that's usually what comes in a bag, cut it all up, get a nice little tub of all this like dressing I made, and it's a good salad that you can just like assemble in any sizes, and it's not a big deal at all, and it makes just everything so much easier. Plus, this instantly rolls into essentially any other salad with the same ingredients. Maybe the next night, make tomato soup, use the croutons. Night after that, decide you want more of a blue cheese, Thousand Island thing. Same thing, just like mix it up. You could make that dressing instead. It's surprisingly easy. I actually expected that a lot of those dressings would just take some kind of like weird step, like cooking them for extra minutes or something, but no, it's quick, it's easy, and it's just a great meal to know how it's made and what's in it. So again, I'm Grant, this is Second Plate. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back again next week.